All right, we're going to jump in and get started in Visual Studio. Visual Studio is probably the most popular editor for doing C# development. And that's what we're going to work on in this series, is jumping in and doing some really light C# development. There's other options available. You could use Visual Studio Code. It's a lighter weight editor. It's free on all platforms. Although Visual Studio, if you just want to use it for educational purposes, is free, and it is free on Windows. If you're a Mac user like myself, you might want to look at JetBrains Writer. I think it's a really excellent product. Not quite as good as Visual Studio, I think, for C#, but quite good as well. And as I mentioned, Visual Studio Code, kind of a lightweight version, is available as well. I personally think that's kind of the worst of the options. I love Visual Studio Code, nothing against it, but it's maybe the worst of the options. But if you have full Visual Studio, you're coming in, you'll see something that looks like this. We can create a new project. For this series of videos, we're going to be creating a console application. So I'm going to click Next. We can name it anything we want. I'm going to call mine, well, we're just going to go with Console App 3. Next. Then it's going to ask, what version of .NET do we want? In general, I'm making this video at the time. .NET 8 is the long-term support version. .NET 9 has just recently came out. We're going to stick with 8 here. There's a variety of options here. In general, you want to pick one of the later versions. You'll actually notice many of these are already, like 7 and 5 are already out of support. 3.1's out of support. So we probably want to pick something that is supported. We're just going to stick with 8 for the purpose of this. If you're watching this video at a much later date, .NET 9 or .NET 10 is out, feel free to choose one of those. What we're covering in here probably won't impact what we're doing. When that kind of fires up, we get an editor within Visual Studio, or a text editor. Most programming is done by entering text into a text editor, or sometimes referred to as code. Here we have a very simple program. It's console.WriteLine. Console is a static class for interacting with the console, that little text-based interface for interacting with programs, and WriteLine. So we're going to write some text, hello world. This is the most common program kind of written. Everybody writes some sort of hello world in some way, shape, or form. You'll notice if we look at the Solution Explorer, you may already have the Solution Explorer shown. By default, Visual Studio will show that. I must have had that off. And notice there's a program.cs. That's the text file we're working in now. Again, most programs are written as a whole bunch of text files. They get compiled into an application. Now, that application can take a variety of forms. It can be a web application for something on the web. It can be a game. It could be a desktop application. It could be a variety of things. Here we're actually building a console application. We're going to run this. It'll go through and build it. It takes that text files and makes it into something that can be ran, some sort of executable. And then in this case, since it's a console application, it's going to do that, and it's going to run and execute and drop hello world to the console. That's step 1 for us. We're going to go in later videos and continue to expand this. In this series of videos, we're going to be talking on a lot of topics. The next video, we're going to talk about top-level statements. Then we're going to jump into variables, then conditionals. Then we're going to do some looping. And we may jump into a little bit of coding conventions along the way. And then we're going to talk about infix, postfix notation. And you're going to write a very simple postfix processor. That's what this kind of series is going to be about. This is step 1, and we're going to have a whole bunch of videos along this line.